You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.
There's a buzz in the air around the electrification of India's public bus transport. Delhi has become the largest city in India with a fleet of 800 blue or electric buses. PM E-Bus Seva scheme has been launched to add 10,000 electric buses in 169 cities across the country. On the urban agenda, we ask, is the electric bus rollout fast enough to meet the rising needs of clean transportation in Indian cities? Now, Lieutenant Governor V.K. Saxena and Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal recently flagged off 400 new electric buses, bringing the total electric bus fleet of Delhi Transport Corporation (DTC) to 800, making it the largest in India. Currently, Delhi operates around 7,780 buses. That means around 10% of Delhi's buses have become electric. By the end of 2023, the goal is to add another 1,100 e-buses to take this total to 1,900. And the final goal under Delhi's EV policy is to electrify 80% of its public bus fleet by 2025 to touch 8,000 e-buses. Now, the e-blue bus fleet is expected to reduce carbon emissions by 1.07 lakh tons each year, and a study by Kyushu University suggests that a complete shift to battery-operated electric buses in Delhi could reduce pollutant emissions by as much as 75%, improving air quality and public health. For a deep dive into the benefits and challenges of e-bus rollout, I'm joined by Ashish Kundra. He's a Principal Secretary Transport at the Government of Delhi, and Akshima Ghate Managing Director, RMI India. Thank you very much for joining me, Mr. Kundra. 800 blue buses, all of them functional, including the 400 which have just got rolled out last week?
Absolutely, all of them are running on the streets of Delhi.
And 1,100 more will be done by the end of this year?
Yes, we are hoping that by end of the year we'll have about 2,000 electric buses in all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of them will be operational?
That's right.
Okay. So my next question is on the infrastructure which is required for buses, which is one of them is charging. It said that you need one electric bus to charge for an hour would probably take in as much power as 125 ACs need to run for an hour, right? So how are you optimizing the charging of these buses so that it does not put pressure on Delhi's power grids?
So, the model which we are following in Delhi for charging infrastructure for buses is that we electrify the depots. So, typically our depots are able to accommodate anywhere between 100 to 200 buses. And we get the power from the distribution company and from the nearest point in the grid. Then the DISCOM makes an assessment whether the grid is stable enough to give that kind of a load. Typically for about 100 buses, we need about 4 megawatts of power. Mm-hmm. And if the grid is not stable enough or it needs further strengthening, then the upstream investment for that is also made by us. In some cases, the location of the depot is such that we need to pull it from a 66 kV level, which means that you need to create a grid. Which is a higher investment proposition. But let's remember that this is like creating petrol pumps afresh, and because these buses are a plug-and-play model, and they get charged in the depot. So the upstream investment is also substantial, but we are doing that to match up with the induction program.
Okay, Akshima, over to you now. If you just look at the fares, right? Now, these buses, e-buses, are way more expensive than your regular buses, right? They cost about 2 crores versus 40-50 lakhs. Some of it is subsidized by the government, but the fare of all, whether it's a e-bus or a non-e-bus, remains the same for Delhi citizens, ranging between 10 rupees to 25 rupees depending on the distance travelled. How will these private manufacturers who are doing this in participation with the Delhi government make money on this? Is it a profitable venture for them?
The most interesting part of any electric vehicle, in this case electric bus, is its cost of operations, which is way, way lower than a diesel or an equivalent CNG bus. And I think that's where is the entire play of electric vehicles today. So while that upfront delta is 1.2 crores or, plus minus of that, the advantage really is in the economics of the operations, which can actually be 1/3 or much lower than, depending on the cost of electricity, the electricity tariff. That is where the advantage of EVs really comes. And if you look at the overall total cost of operations of buses today, even without subsidy for certain use cases like intercity transportation, actually the total cost of ownership of electric buses is at par or lower than that of diesel and CNG buses. So I think it's really the upfront gap which we need to address for some years till economies of scale pick up. Hopefully battery prices come down even further. Till then, with the subsidies, with the viability gap funding which is coming through different sources, I think there is a strong case still to be investing and to be able to make these operations profitable.
We should be doing a lot more of it then, but we'll come to that a little bit later. Talking about this model where you have, let's say, a Tata Motors, which has supplied buses to Delhi government, or DTC rather. This is the first time, Mr. Kundra, that we actually have a model where the State Transport Corporation, in this case DTC, is not going to be running the bus. But the revenues or the fares collected will still go to DTC, and then DTC has to pay these operators, right? The private consortium of operator. Do you believe, because this is again something that everyone is asking, that will be done fairly and they will make money? DTC is not going to suddenly say, oh, I've run out of money and, I will not be able to honor my promise, because it's happened with state power corporations before.
Yeah, so first of all, let's understand that, this is not purchase of buses, as you're aware. It's a gross cost contract. And the bid parameter is the rate per kilometer. And we have to assure them a certain number of kilometers. In case of Delhi, it's 200 kilometers per day. DTC has created an escrow account where we keep 2 months payable on this parameter to Tata Motors in this case, and which is replenished as we go along. Delhi has fortunately had the experience of running a similar model in the cluster scheme, where smaller clusters of CNG buses were operated, contracted out, private operators running them, and we were paying them similarly through an escrow account. In as far as the fare fixation is concerned, the fare fixation undoubtedly is done by the government, but as long as it is backed by state government guarantees that it is going to replenish the account for 2 months payables, I don't see there'll be a problem in this mechanism.
Okay, all right. So let's come to the broader EV policy. The first policy got over, EV policy of Delhi, which you worked on along with Mr. Kundra. It was over in August. Do you think it was successful in achieving its milestones, and why?
I think Delhi is one of the most, I would say, the front runners right now in terms of success of implementation of its EV policy. I think any policy is as good at its implementation, and the numbers really speak for themselves. It is, in fact, perhaps, amongst very few states right now, which is seeing double-digit adoption rates. Throughout the policy period, we have seen 10% adoption rates for EVs. In fact, it touched even like almost 17% in December 2022, which is like, 17% of your new vehicle sales were actually electric vehicles.
But and this is compared to rest of other Indian states, much higher number?
Yes, it is a much higher number. It is, that's why I said, a front runner in that sense. But I think most importantly, there are many other things Delhi has been able to do first. One of them is the charging points. Today, during what we see during the policy period, the city now has close to 5,000 charging points. It came up with really unique regulatory, I would say, interventions, like creating a single window clearance system so that, people at homes and workplaces could actually install chargers. We have close to 1,500 chargers which have been installed in, residential premises, commercial premises through that single window clearance facility. facility. And I think all credit to Delhi government and the leadership that is there, that we have almost, I think what we see is that implementation of close to 90% provisions of the policy today.
So my next question is, when do we see the next EV policy, or what is called 2.0 policy?
Yeah, so
it's supposed to be rolled out, it's under work, and what do we expect? Because I think the mood was, or the larger goal has been set by Mr. Kejriwal. He said, you know, we'll have 80% of buses by 2025, which will be electric, but 1 in 4 vehicle on Delhi will be electric, right? So are you going to do more?
Yes, so you know, we are still in the process of giving final touches to the policy. We have had a series of consultation with all stakeholders. Firstly, I think we are going to focus, you know, hugely now on the charging infrastructure. Secondly, we are going to come out with attendant schemes and regulations which will supplement the main EV policy. So for us, we view the aggregators, like fleet aggregators, whether they are cab hailing companies or whether they are
like your Blue Smarts and the Ubers.
Yes, exactly. Or food delivery companies like Zomato, Swiggy, etc. And then e-commerce companies. We have already put out a draft for public consultation. We again are giving a final shape to that, in which there are mandates for a phased electrification program for all these fleets. So the way I look at it, I think the early adopters are, of course, buses we are going to do, passenger service vehicles, which is auto rickshaws and cabs. Then two-wheeler segment is also going to see a very rapid, accelerated kind of an adoption. Then in the cargo segment, again, intra-city cargo movement, again, there will be a very huge uptake in the coming years. So the car segment might take slightly longer
but public transport system
that
and commercial
undoubtedly,
vehicles
yes,
will move much faster.
Absolutely.
Okay. Controversial question, but it's a good one to ask. You know, it was wonderful to see, you know, Chief Minister and LG together when it came to flagging off the blue buses recently. There's always this conflict in terms of who's doing the work, right? Is it the state government or should the center get the credit for it? Give us some, without the controversy, in terms of who's spending what in the rollout of these e-buses.
Yes, let's be very clear that firstly, the entire electrification program in the country of mobility, it is a collaborative effort between the center and the states.
Right.
In fact, Niti Aayog was the one which kind of initiated this process to run this program across the country. In as far as buses is concerned, the Ministry of Heavy Industry is the one which administers the FAME scheme, which gives capital subsidy upfront. So what does this capital subsidy do? It in a way incentivizes the manufacturers to manufacture these buses and kind of defray some bit of that capital cost.
And that is center?
That is center. In as far as the operational cost over a period of 12 years is concerned, that is borne by the state. So it is both entities have a different role to play. So we shouldn't say that this or the other. It is a collaborative partnership, and that's how things get done.
All right, and things are getting done when it comes to Delhi. Speaking about the center, we also heard the recent announcement of 10,000 electric buses for 169 cities across India. That is the PM E-Seva scheme which has been launched. When we return, we're going to delve into it and ask a very basic question. 10,000 buses for 169 cities, is that enough? Stay with us.
You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com